Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 U.S. Open Data Dive Show. We have a lot to cover. We're going to take an extended look into Oakmont and everything prior U.S. Open, figure out what types of players, statistics that we want to focus on this week, and of course the players in the field for the 125th U.S. Open that qualify or meet the standards that we're looking for. We'll take a minor look into some historical U.S. Open performance from the players in the field, and of course, I'll expand on the research that I posted earlier today to social media. So we have a lot to cover. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where, as I just alluded to, I posted some research earlier today, especially over on X, regarding the past 5 champions of the United States Open. I did exclude 2020 because 2020 was a ridiculous year. But if you want to see this week's research and every week's research for the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So that'll be out later this week. I certainly fired off a couple of players at numbers that I liked this morning. So would love to hear from you all if you have fired off any wagers of your own. But if you want to see those pieces of information, give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for this intro, or at least for social media's portion of the intro, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe, continues to update you with his own version of course history, recent form throughout the week, and he, if you are subscribed to his article, you're going to be able to get his deluxe version, which has his estimated projected ownerships and all of that, along with some insights from him. You really are missing out if you aren't subscribed to his article. Make sure you're doing that and following over on social media. That's because that's where we place our weekly picks and explanation of those picks. Then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you. I see a couple of you in there already. I'll get to you momentarily. But jump into chat. I want to hear from you. How do you think Oakmont plays this week? Is it going to be absolute carnage, or will we see a mid-single digit winner for the U.S. Open? Who are you targeting? Who are you staying away from? All of that. Any wagers you've made, just feel free to jump in chat. And if you're not able to catch a show live, put your thoughts and opinions in the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2025 U.S. Open. And we're going to start over at Windfinder. I just had Fantasy National up by mistake. Hey, good evening, Joey. Really appreciate that. It is very, very good to be back, considering the life circumstances that were going on. Everything's going well on that front, or as well as can be after cardiac arrests and whatnot. But it's good to be back. Looking forward to getting back into my routine, if you will, for the U.S. Open. So hopefully you had a good 6 weeks or whatever it was that I was away. And it's good to see you this evening. Thanks again for jumping in the chat. We're going to start with the forecast for Oakmont. And today it looks like they were getting hit with some decent amount of rain. Or if not today, at least this evening. So that should soften the course a little bit. I would not get too overly caught up in that, especially the greens. These greens, much like what you hear about at Sawgrass and at Augusta National, these greens have this sub-air system that will help dry out any moisture that's in there. So these greens will still be fast. They're still going to be very firm, very difficult. So it's just going to make the rough that much thicker, more difficult to play out of. Scrambling around the green is going to be a little bit more difficult. if the course is indeed soft come Thursday. But looks like they're going to get hit with some pretty good rain tonight, maybe a little bit tomorrow. But by the time we reach the actual tournament, it looks pleasant. Very, very little wind, at least in the forecast right now for Oakmont, especially Thursday and Friday. Now, Saturday, some rain does creep into the forecast. Not overly concerned with that, but Sunday, at least in an extended forecast, looks like Sunday could be quite soggy. So we'll have to see and keep our eyes on that throughout the week as we move forward. I'm not going to be worrying too much about this tonight. Now, if it looks more solid come Wednesday night, maybe I adjust my mixed condition model a little bit for it. But as of right now, I am more focused on the Thursday, Friday, trying to get 6 golfers through the cut in my lineups and whatnot. And then, as I mentioned, I made a couple of outright wagers on players at numbers that I liked. So not a whole lot here with the forecast. It's a U.S. Open. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be very, very challenging. Might be a little soft Thursday, maybe. Depends on how much the course dries out with the wind Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursday and Friday look great. A little bit of rain possibility on Saturday. And Sunday does look quite a bit soggy. So with that, we'll move to Fantasy National. Do a couple of high-level overview things real quick, and then we'll jump into some pretty detailed data. One of the things that I did not do last night, I certainly want to take a good look at, is taking a look at long rough, because this rough will definitely be long, no doubt about that. It's going to be thick, difficult to play out of. So since the beginning of 2024, beginning of last year, your top performers at courses with long rough: Scotty, Rory, Shane Lowry, Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Xander, Colin Morikawa, Ludwig Aubert, J.J. Spaun, and Aaron Rai. I mean, really, probably no surprise here in the top 6 or 7, the who's who of the PGA Tour. You even have Bryson up here in the top 15 with very few rounds. This would be last year's U.S. Open and last year's PGA Valhalla and Pinehurst. Just to get a quick gander here, like Scotty, this is the Memorial from a couple weeks ago. Byron Nelson was considered long rough at TPC Craig Ranch. The Players API always has extremely long rough. Just to give you an idea of what courses fit into that subset of data. Definitely wanted to look at that. We're definitely going to use this filter on one of the statistics or metrics that I'm looking at this week. The only other thing we'll do, I will keep 2024. We didn't do it last night. We only looked at 2025. But when rounds are difficult relative to par, your top performers are Scotty, Rory, Corey Connors, Ludwig, Xander. So a little bit different order, but the same 5 of your top 7 or 8 from the long rough here on difficult. Bryson, Colin Morikawa, Russell Henley, Shane Lowry, and Ryan Gerard are your top 10. So basically 7 or 8 of the same players in the top 10 for both long rough and difficult relative to par. With that, I'm not too keen on going too much further before we look at some, deeper statistical data. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go over to Microsoft Excel, and this is its own file. I keep all of the majors in their own file. This is strokes gained when we have, when we had the data. So, for example, this is the country club from Matt Fitzpatrick's win. We didn't have the data there. Strokes gained data we don't have a lot of throughout the years, only kind of recently from Pebble Beach on, which coincidentally was the time frame of the research that I posted earlier today, since 2019 was the adjustment in the PGA Tour schedule, moving the PGA Championship to May. So that just kind of neatly coincides with this data that we have here. So we don't have anything from Oakmont in terms of a strokes gained. Sorry. Don't have anything from Oakmont in terms of a strokes gained. We'll take a casual look at some of this here, but it's a U.S. Open. We're going to be focused mainly on how U.S. Opens generally play. So as you can see, the past couple of years, off the tee has been a little bit more emphasized, at least for the players who finish in the top 30. Approach has gone down a little bit, considering in 2021 at Torrey Pines, this is a 4. That's a massive number. 2.83. I mean, massive numbers. It did drastically drop last year at Pinehurst, and the around the green drastically rose. I still think we're going to have the most emphasis in approach, and I'll explain why towards the end of the show, in terms of past U.S. Open champions and their iron form leading in. But this is, it is a U.S. Open. Greens are going to be missed. Players are going to have to worry or be adept around the green. Sand saves, especially at Oakmont, sand saves. I'm a little, I don't want to say wary, but cautious on off the tee. I am much more concerned, and I mentioned this last night, I think I'm a little bit more concerned with good drives gained, particularly because this rough is long and it's thick, difficult to play out of. I want players who are very good out of the rough, because missed fairways will happen. It is a U.S. Open. Or they're just so good that they hit the fairways anyway. And you can see just how much of an emphasis there was last year at Pinehurst in terms of fairways and good drives. The distance really dropped, especially from the LACC Wyndham Clark win here. This is Torrey, very long course. Even then, it wasn't a huge amount of a distance thing. Now, this is Winged Foot 2020, in the fall of 2020. Distance was a huge factor. So I might take a casual look at distance, but again, I think I'm much more focused on the good drives gained aspect of off the tee. Greens, yes, they're going to be very important, but they're going to get missed with a fair amount of a fair number of times by all these players. So not sure how much I'm going to really put into greens. Eagles non-existent. It's a U.S. Open. It's all about your bogey avoidance and maybe even some double avoidance. Now, having said that, we might take a small look at birdies gained when it is difficult. You are going to have to get a couple of birdies, I'll say a few birdies, to contend. But mainly it's the bogey avoidance. And then the meat and potatoes, especially for U.S. Opens, we'll take a look at these par 3s, 4s, and 5s. And we're not too terribly concerned with the individual lengths. As some courses like Pebble Beach have very short par 3s. There's none of those here at Oakmont. In fact, Oakmont, I believe this is Oakmont. Nope, I was 1 year late. That was Chambers. This is Oakmont here. This is 228. Yeah. So in 2016, you can see just the huge emphasis in par 3s, 228 versus like a 167 on average. So par 3s definitely heightened here at Oakmont. Of course, the par fours, this is a par 70 with only two par fives, so the par fives are very, very mitigated. Um, lots of par four and quite a bit in par threes. And then proximity, we didn't have any proximity for Oakmont in 2016. We didn't really start getting proximities until 2019. Historically, U.S. Opens, it's 200 plus. I do have an inkling or a hunch that some more wedges might come into play here at Oakmont. It's not overly long like a Torrey Pines. So, yes, mainly 200 plus, but I still think some wedges will come into play. And then putting, there's quite a bit of slope on these greens. So we're going to be looking at 3-putt avoidance, overall putting on lightning greens. Yeah. It says 5 to 10 here. If players are able to make their 5 to 10 footers, in the rare case that they do get those for birdie or even for par, it's going to be very important. So we're going to take a look at 3-putt avoidance for sure. Not going to do anything with Poa Annua for the reasons I mentioned last night, that this is East Coast Poa Annua, and it's a lot different than, say, Riv and Pebble and Torrey and things like that. That's California, that's West Coast Poa. It plays quite a bit different than East Coast Poa. So there's a look at some of the deeper statistical dive into U.S. Opens in the past. Putting has been a pretty big thing, although we do have quite a bit of a high outlier here in Winged Foot. So if I take that away, the approach really starts to flex its muscles, if you will. But we're going to take a look at a lot of this. A lot of this here, maybe some off the tee, but like I said, I'm more so on the good drives game. Good evening, Derek. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very good to see you. Hopefully you've had a good 6 weeks or however long it was that I wasn't able to be live. Having some run right now to celebrate a great U.S. Open week. Great to see you. So I don't know if you saw any of the videos that I did a few weeks back. Sorry, I'm just trying to center my camera here. Solid 2 weeks out of the 5, so not bad. I'm glad to hear that. Glad to hear that you've had some good amount of success. Without going too much into it, because I did post a couple of short videos, 5 to 6 minutes, that if you want more detail, you can check that out after the show tonight. But I had a lot of things going on with my father off the stream, off show, that really mandated my attention. So I just had to step away. Very, very simply, I had to step away. Things are better now, and I'm hoping to be back on a back to the routine, if you will, despite all of the changes with life, basically. Watch both. Sorry to hear. Hope things are better. Well, I appreciate that, Derek. I really do. I don't think I'm the best, but I'm certainly appreciative of the time that you take out of your day to listen to watch me give my half penny's worth of advice and analysis. But it is good to see you again. Feel free to jump in with any questions that you have. Because I'm going to be honest here. I mean, having been away for 6 weeks, I'm probably a little bit rusty. Just being transparent and being fair. Give you the best I got. Well, we'll see. So anyway, there's the historical stuff around all of the U.S. Opens. How I feel Oakmont's going to play. We'll jump back now to Fantasy National. If Roy misses the cut, despite my me not playing last week, I did still keep in touch with Gabe, on a I'll say half-hearted basis. That's not the correct wording, but hopefully you understand the gist there. just to stay in touch with him, and he mentioned how high he was on Rory and the Bombers in general last week, and from the very little, very very little that I knew of TPC Toronto, I wasn't all that impressed, or I wouldn't have been high on Rory, I don't think. Rory's big weapon is when his driver can separate from everybody else in the field. And from what I knew, or from what I understood of TPC Toronto, that those fairways were pretty wide. So that kind of mitigated Rory's biggest weapon. Now, I would not have said that he was going to miss the cut or shoot 78 or whatever. But I feel like I would have had probably a decent week, because I would have probably stayed away from Rory, considering how popular he was going to be and his price. As far as this week, we'll get into it, but I really don't see driver being necessary around Oakmont a lot. Which, again, I don't know how much that helps Rory. Rory being 12-4, yes, he is $2,000 cheaper than Scotty, but at the same time, you can't argue Scotty's form at the moment. 3 wins in his past 4 events, and the other one was a disastrous top 5. Scotty is back to being Scotty, gaining 13 with his irons. If he's even anywhere close to field average in putting, it is going to be difficult to beat him. Whereas Rory, Rory's missed with his irons the past couple of times. Now, his irons were very good at Augusta, but he's missed with his irons the past couple of times, even at the Truist in Philly. Outside of Philly, around the green wasn't great. I don't know. My early lean is fade of Rory. Yes, I am absolutely... I don't want to say accuracy, because that would imply fairways gained. I don't think that is right either. We'll get into it, but I'm much more about the precision. Think about players like Corey Connors. Players that are so good ball striking. They'll hit their plenty of fairways, but, fairways are going to get missed. This is a U.S. Open. Players that can recover from the rough. Players of that ilk. Corey Connors, Keegan, I'm really, really high on. You say Straka. Interestingly enough, Straka hasn't been all that great. The off the tee's been fine. Straka's been pretty accurate, I guess. So this is me not realizing how accurate he has been. He's lacked a lot of distance, but Straka has been very good at finding fairways. See these fairways gain numbers. Okay, yeah. So to your point, yes, Straka. I was that didn't come to mind, but we just saw the stats there. He's been pretty darn good. All right, let's go through these various page views here in Fantasy National. Figure out the players, at least the way I see Oakmont playing 72 hours, in advance of the tournament and whatnot. Again, I'm not too keen on off the tee. I do think it will play some factor. So in the past 36 rounds, so long as it's been in 2025, your top off the tee players, we'll just go off the tee in general. Scotty, Corey Connors, Rory, Ludwig, Nicholas Norgard. But again, this is all in distance, so I'd be a little concerned about Norgard this week, because I just don't see distance being a huge factor. It's obviously going to help, but I don't think it's going to be the be-all, end-all, say like a Torrey Pines is. And Norgard can hit different zip codes with his driver. So I'm a little concerned there. Pendrith, Spieth, Spawn, Bryson and Daniel Berger, your top 10 in terms of off the tee in the past 36 rounds, so long as it's been this calendar year. I'll expand the time frame here. Let's take a look at a couple of different things off the tee when it's difficult. This is a U.S. Open. It's obviously going to be very difficult. Rory, Bryson, Scotty, Ludwig, Spieth, Morikawa, Wyndham Clark, Xander, Minwoo Lee, and Ben On. And then just out of curiosity, let's take a look at off the tee long rough. When players know that, fairway finding is a bit more of a premium than usual. Scotty, Ludwig, Rory, Connors, Colin Morikawa, Sung Jae, Sam Stevens, Johnny Vegas, Keegan, Siwoo Kim, and Ben On. Like, when you mentioned Straka, I was thinking more like Siwoo. Siwoo can thread a needle with his driver. He doesn't have a ton of distance. He's long enough, as you can see, top 10 RBC Heritage, top 20 Truist, top 10 the PGA, but he absolutely threads a needle with the driver. Players like him are where I'm leaning early this week. It's for Siwoo, it's a matter of if his irons cooperate, because you can see he's gaining a bunch of fairways but missing on greens. So my guess would be that the irons haven't been great. And you see that there, particularly at the Memorial. So those are the types of players that I'm leaning early. But fortunately, we still have 2.5 days that I have room to change my mind and throw everything out the window as the week goes on. But that's where I'm at early this week. So there's a look at the off the tee. Most importantly, at least for me, we're going to take a look at extreme recent iron form. Last 24. I'm assuming Morikawa and Brian Harman are also very accurate with the driver. I think Harman's had some issues. Morikawa's generally okay. But even Morikawa's, kind of struggled lately, particularly around the green. Morikawa, in terms of fairway finding, yes. He's been pretty solid in that regard. But much like Siwoo, his irons have not been Colin Morikawa-like. Particularly at the PGA, he's struggled mightily around the green. Yeah, so I don't know about Colin. And then you said Harman. I have no idea what his price is, but Harman's struggled lately, so I'm gonna have to look at him very quickly. Like, Harman's just been bad. Like, off the tee has been bad. His irons were a disaster at Jack's place. Brian Harman is not somebody that interested me early this week. He has been finding fairways, but like the irons have been so bad. So generally speaking, yes, but in that specific case, Harman, no. We're going to look at extremely recent iron form. And when I explain the research that I did and posted earlier today, it'll make sense. So your top strokes gained approach players in the last 24 rounds, so long as it's been this calendar year: Scotty, Sepp Straka, Shane Lowry, Xander, Bud Cauley, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Daniel Berger, Colin Morikawa, and Keegan. You see Corey Connors just outside the top 10. You can see where my emphasis is, Derek. A lot of extreme iron form. I mean, even if we go to the last 12 rounds, I won't do this in the mixed condition model. I'll go to 24 rounds. But, we're wanting, players that are extremely hot with their irons right now. Scotty, Lowry, Grillo, off of his RBC Canadian performance. Solid. What did he gain at Toronto? Yeah, 6. I thought he top 10'd. Oh, it's not even in here. What the heck? I thought he top 10'd the RBC Canadian, but Grillo, Fox, obviously the win. Straka, Neiman, Nico Echeverria has been really hot lately. Pendrith, Griffin, Grazerman. Last thought of this week is with the rough being as bad as it is and the green speeds, do you think players making this cut will be a little more random than most weeks? I don't know if random's the right word to say it, but somebody, and I wish I could give proper credit, I just don't remember where I saw it, that the U.S. Open is such a beautiful tournament because a player can play very, very well for 35 holes. One blow-up hole will take him out of the tournament. So I don't want to call it random. It's more about the consistency, I think is the way I would phrase that, Derek. Good evening, Anthony. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very, very much appreciated. Good to see you. How about driving accuracy? The fairways are 15 to 20 yards wide. That's what I was getting at here in a little bit. I talked a little bit about it in the off the tee, how I'm not too terribly concerned with off the tee. I am more focused on this thing called good drives gained, and when we get to the drive or the fairways and the greens tab, I'll go into that. I am much more into the good drives gained, in the sense that yes, distance can help. Yes, I mean DJ won in 2016, and he was probably the longest player on tour at that point. But that leaderboard, and that's actually a very good reminder for me that I'll bring up the 2016 U.S. Open in a different tab. That leaderboard was littered with not long hitters. Lowry's never been the longest of hitters. Furyk was not long. Piercy not long. Brandon Grace, Kevin Na, EJ. This was at Oakmont. Length helps. It's not mandatory around here, I don't think. So I'm much more of the opinion. I don't want to use the word accuracy. I was mentioning this to Derek earlier in the show, Anthony. I don't want to use the term accuracy. I'm going to use the word precision. This is a U.S. Open. The fairways are going to get missed, even by the best players in the world. I want to see generally who hits fairways, or they are really darn good out of the rough. And we'll get into that, in the next page view. That's my exact thing. I'm thinking about Pavone from last year because he came out of nowhere. Hasn't done much since. You also see studs like Shane Lowry missed the cut. Again, it's early in the week. I have time to adjust if I hear, from people that I listen to and respect in this and that does the same thing. If there's an overwhelming narrative coming in that I haven't heard yet or anything to that effect, but I generally think I'm on the ball striker plan and hoping that they make a few putts. Rough is 5 inches deep, so it's very long, but I think it's more thick than long, if that makes sense, Anthony. I was looking at a couple of players, X feeds or whatever, and both of them said that the rough is long, but it's not as big of a story as people are making it out to be, because you can get some fair lies in there. It's more about the thickness of the rough. So, hey, good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Good to see you in chat this evening. You were one of the few that were able to make all of the shows, the 5 to 8 minute shows when I went live. So again, I very much appreciate your kind words of encouragement and all of that. I'm glad to be back in somewhat of a routine. I'll use air quotes around that. We're still trying to get settled because I did move during this whole process as well. So trying to get settled, but here for the U.S. Open to give you my half penny's worth of analysis. Good to see you this evening, Phil. Let me get through this because people are starting to jump in here, and I don't want to turn away any questions, but I definitely want to get through a lot of this analysis and how I'm seeing. So looking at, extreme, immediate iron form, there's your top 10 there. We're going to go with a couple of different things here for around the green. I'll do a difficult, when rounds are difficult relative to par, around the green performers. Sorry. Let me make sure I have enough rounds there. Scotty, Hideki, Terrell Hatton, Tommy Fleetwood, Cam Smith, Siwoo, Davis Thompson, Sungjae, Bryson, and Seabez. Those are your top 10 when rounds are difficult around the green. I'm more kind of interested in this long rough. At least on this page view. We'll definitely take a look at some sand saves considering there are 168 bunkers around Oakmont. But on this page view, it's just around the green. Top around the green players when rough is long. Hideki, Russell Henley, Sungjae, Siwoo, Adam Scott, Cam Smith, Seabez, Bryson, Scotty, Davis Thompson, and Michael Kim. Been low-key getting destroyed. Well, I hate to hear that. I know Derek's had mentioned he had a couple of good weeks. So we're going to try and get back on the right foot this week for you, Phil. I'm going to just try to get back on a foot. How about that? Close your eyes, random draw the players. It's been rough. I will say I'm never a big believer in Sam Burns, so I was I don't want to say surprised, intrigued, I guess, seeing him compete last week in Toronto. The last thing in this page view, we're going to take a look at some putting. And we're going to look at lightning speed putting. Again, I've mentioned this a couple times very, very quickly. I'm not going to be looking at Poa annua. This is East Coast Poa annua. We're on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. The only other Poa annua, pure Poa annua courses in Fantasy National is all West Coast. Places like Riv and Torrey and Pebble. I'm not an agronomist. I won't even pretend to try and explain or differentiate East and West Coast Poa annua. But there is a difference between the two. So we're not going to look at Poa putting this week. We're just going to look at lightning speed performance. So total putting, 3-putt avoidance, lag putting, things of that nature. Your top putters in the past couple of years on lightning speed greens. Denny McCarthy, Matt Fitzpatrick, Harris English, Thomas Dietrich, Burns, Cam Smith, Xander, Max Grazeman, Justin Rose, and Justin Lauer. Complete 5K punt, Matt Vogt. I have no idea anything about this player. So, yeah. If that's the way you're going to get unique a little bit, Anthony, I mean, if you have any knowledge about the player, so be it. But the little that I looked at the 5Ks, I was not impressed. So that means I have some very, very tough decisions to make about Scotty, because I don't see how you can play Scotty without at least dipping your toe down here in the 5Ks. And I wasn't terribly impressed. Now, granted, this is still Monday. I have all of, the rest of tonight, all of tomorrow, all of Wednesday to maybe try to find some gems. But at first look, I wasn't impressed. All right, let's go into fairways and greens. It's very, very quickly. I'm going to skip the driver distance for now. There might be 5% driving distance in the mixed condition model come Wednesday night. I'm just going to skip it for now and on a time crunch, if you will. He's a local club pro, knows Oakmont, back of his hand. He will make the cut. I'm not going to do, any fantastical wagers or anything, but all right, if that's where you're planting your flag, that's Wednesday night. Make sure you jump in and say that's your mad scientist play. Is Matt Vogt. Quite interesting. All right. We're going to take a look at good drives here, and again, I'm just going to use this long rough filter, knowing that the rough is extremely long and difficult. Who are the players that can still hit the green if they're in that rough, or don't even worry about it and just find all the fairways? Your top good drives gained players. Long rough, good drives gained. I don't think it'll change too much, but you can already see like Aaron Rye now jumps to number 1. So my apologies on that. I had this filter still checked. Your top good drives gained players in long rough: Aaron Rye, Sepp Straka, Scotty, Tommy Fleetwood, Corey Connors, Colin Morikawa, Shane Lowry, Takumi Kanaya, 5,700 Takumi Kanaya. Interesting. Sung Jae and Siwoo. So you see, like Ludwig drops out. Brian Harmon drops all the way to 24th. So take that for what you will. The only other thing I'm going to do with good drives, we'll take a look at difficult, but I am leaning towards using the long rough filter. Your top good drives gained players when it's difficult: Sepp Straka, Lowry, Connors, Henley, Glover, Fleetwood, Colin Morikawa, Scotty, Lonto Griffin, and Siwoo. I'm saying Siwoo can absolutely thread a needle with his driver. That's why I kind of leaned him as an example early on in the show when I was talking to Derek about how I'm envisioning looking at my player pool. Definitely want to look at some sand saves. Burns, Hideki, Patrick Reed. Actually, you know what? Let me take that off. Let's just do the top sand saves in 2025. Just who's been really good lately at sand saves. Hideki, Siwoo, Michael Kim, Tom Hoagie, James Hahn, Harmon, Wallace, Fitz, Burns, and Reed. And then scrambling, I will bring back the difficult. Your top scramblers when it's difficult: Hideki, Denny McCarthy, Sam Stevens. 5,900 Sam Stevens. Interesting. Scotty, Rory, Brian Campbell, who I believe is out. I believe Brian Campbell's out, but somebody in chat can correct me. Siwoo, Mackenzie Hughes, Tommy Fleetwood, Russell Henley, and Matt Wallace, in case Campbell is out. I do know Tagala is out as well. Is he still in here? Yes. I know Tagala is out. All right. We're going to scoring. Yeah. It's all about the bogey avoidance most of the time. I will say you will have to get a few birdies to try and contend. So your top birdie getters when rounds are difficult: Scotty, Bryson, Sam Burns, Davis Riley, Ryan Gerard, Ludwig, Connors, Bud Cauley, Rory, and Batia. But we're mainly looking at bogey avoidance: Scotty, Rory, Ludwig, Xander, McCarthy, Siwoo Kim, Colin Morikawa, John Rahm, Corey Connors, and Sepp Straka. For proximity, yes, most people are going to say the long iron proximities, and it makes a lot of sense. 175 to 200, 200 plus. I'm just going to sort on this total prox for now, but I would not be surprised if I put, 5% in some of these shorter proximities, because there are some shorter par fours here at Oakmont. I just don't see anything in the mid irons. I don't see 150 to 175 coming into play much. I don't see 125 to 150 coming into play much. I think these shorter irons could, particularly if players miss these fairways, they're going to just be hacking out to try and salvage par from, I'm just going to use the term, 100 yards out. So I could maybe see the short proximities and the long proximities mattering. But your top total prox players this calendar year: Scotty, JJ Spawn, Berger, Sepp Straka, Keegan, Ludwig, Russell Henley, Batia, Lucas Glover, Bud Cauley. Going to go quickly into the par 3s and 4s, and then we'll get into the research that I posted. Par 3s, huge factor here. And again, we're mainly focused on these two lengths, a little bit on the 175 to 200. But case in point here, Sepp Straka is the number one par 3 performer, but his worst links are the links here at Oakmont. So I'd be maybe a little bit cautious on Sepp Straka, specifically on par 3s, because he takes advantage of the short par 3s, of which there are none here at Oakmont. When rough is this thick and random, does short game get more important or less? Since it's random with the lies you get, I would argue it gets more important, but that is certainly to be debated. But I would argue that short game gets much more important because everyone's going to struggle to hit greens from time to time at Oakmont. Despite their size, they are 8,500 square feet. They will not. They won't play to that size. Imagine like it was last year with Pinehurst. You don't have the dome per se. Whoop, there we go. You don't have like the dome per se of Pinehurst, but you have a lot of undulation. They are so firm, very fast. There's a lot of pitch, a lot of slope to them. They play much smaller than their size, so greens are going to get missed. You know, I'm just going to use the name Corey Connors because he's very good with his irons. Even Corey Connors is going to miss some greens this week. So if players are struggling around the green, I don't see them contending. I just don't. Because the thing about, this leaderboard here, like DJ, yes, everyone knew about his prowess, off the tee and how long he was. DJ doesn't get enough credit for how good of a short game player he was. Maybe not necessarily putting, but his short game, his chipping, his pitching, say 75 yards and in. He was very good. And then look at these other players. Jim Furyk, ball striker, very good short game. Brandon Grace, great short game. Kevin Na, Zach Johnson, great short game. Jason Day, great putter. Like, there's a lot of short game here. So, again, that's why I'm not too keen on the distance narrative this week at Oakmont. Coming back to these par threes, somebody like Russell Henley, a little concerned with the 225 plus, but Russell Henley solid on par threes. Morikawa, especially the long par threes. Denny McCarthy, very solid on the longest three lengths of par threes. Somebody to keep your eye on there. Shane Lowry. Nico Echeverria actually has been pretty solid on the longest three lengths of par threes. Again, I've got this sorted on total par threes, but we're looking at these three lengths. There's one par three that measures to this length, one here, and two here, including that 290-yard behemoth. So, this 225 plus is going to carry some weight. Matt McCarty, somebody else to maybe think about. Of course, Scotty. Ryan Gerard, 35th, 5th, 38th. Not too bad. So make sure when you hear about par threes, don't take it at face value for total par threes. Because Sepp Straka is a great example of this. Sepp Straka demolishes these very short par threes, or at least he has in 2025. It's these links that matter for Oakmont. Par fours. Now this I am going to sort on all par fours because we do have a drivable par four. We have 2 to 3 that fall into the 350 to 400, and we've got 2 that are 500 plus. And that's the beauty of Oakmont, is that you've got a very good mix of short and long par fours. So your top par four performers this calendar year: Scotty, Tommy Fleetwood, Justin Thomas, Berger, Cantley, Rye, Michael Kim, Shane Lowry, JJ Spawn, and Keegan Bradley. All right, we've been going for quite a while. I definitely want to make sure I hit or expand on the research that I posted earlier today. This is U.S. Open performance, so long as that Open is in Fantasy National. And Fantasy National goes all the way back to 2012, so you can see somebody like Rory has 13 U.S. Opens for stats. This is just a quick overview on how well they have done in U.S. Opens. You see Xander's played in 8 U.S. Opens. He's averaged a 7th place finish. Xander has just been the epitome of consistency at U.S. Opens. In fact, Guido Migliozzi he's only played 2 U.S. Opens, but he's averaged top 10. He's done it with all of his ball striking. Guido Migliozzi is a name that you probably should consider in your Stars and Scrubs builds. Minwoo Lee's been pretty good. I think it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors, considering his irons haven't been very good. But other than Minwoo, Look at the players that consistently perform well in U.S. Opens. Their irons are stellar. Brooks, yes, he's a long hitter, but he's also a very good iron player. At least he was in his prime. Cantley, boring player, but he's very good with the irons. Colin Morikawa, no explanation needed. It's a little surprised Tom Kim has been excellent with his irons in U.S. Opens. So that's why we've got such an emphasis on iron play this week. Scotty, of course. A little concerned with McCarthy, although he's played well in U.S. Opens. He's been, scrambling his way around. Fitzpatrick, winner at the country club, mainly with the irons. So there's what that is. Let's talk about some past performance of U.S. Open champions. Of course, Bryson's over on LIV, so he only had 3 tournaments before, his lead up into the U.S. Open win last year. But he was in spectacular form. Again, I only get stats from the PGA Tour. I don't collect LIV statistics, so just keep that in mind as we move forward. I won't have any statistics on, Neiman this year, last year, Brooks, DJ, all that. I only collect from the PGA Tour. But even so, Bryson was in great form. 6th and a 2nd. Wyndham Clark, as random seemingly as Wyndham Clark's win was, top 15 the Memorial, won the Wells Fargo, had another couple of top 10s earlier, 3 months prior. He was in solid form. Matt Fitzpatrick, top 10 the RBC Canadian the week before, top 5 the PGA, runner-up at the Wells Fargo. He was in spectacular form. Rahm, again, I have 2020 in here. I excluded this from my sample size on the things that I posted to X earlier today. Even Gary Woodland, top 10 the PGA. So one of the first things that I noticed was that they had at least one top 10 in the lead up to the U.S. Open. I defined the lead up as since the Masters. Win here, another top 15, top 10, top 5, top 5. Rahm, top 10, top 5 the Masters. Gary Woodland, top 10 the PGA. So that was one of the first criteria that I had seen, is that they had at least a top 10 leading up to the U.S. Open. And I'm only going back to 2019 because the 2019 was the implementation of the current format of the schedule where the PGA is in May. 2018, Brooks, the PGA was played in August. So for my purposes, I stopped here at Gary Woodland in my research. Let's talk about performance at previous U.S. Opens. How important is it for players to have success at previous U.S. Opens? I'm going to tell you, not really a whole lot. Not a whole lot. Bryson won in 2020. He had a top 15 and a top 20, but it's not like he was, beating the door down. Yeah, he had one win, but he had a lot of good, not great finishes in U.S. Opens. Wyndham Clark had never made a cut at a U.S. Open and then wins. Matt Fitzpatrick, couple of top 15s, good, maybe even great, but not elite, and then wins at the country club. Rahm did have a top 5, but it's not like he was consistently top 10, top 5ing, top 10ing. So don't get caught up in the whole you have to have some U.S. Open success or a lot of U.S. Open success. This right here shows you don't, particularly Wyndham Clark. So not really all that important to have had a lot of success in prior U.S. Opens. Let's take a look at recent form. Again, I'm only going down to Woodland down here, but here's the lead up. Take a look at how these former champions played in the PGA Championship. Runner-up, miscut from Wyndham Clark. He's a little bit of an outlier. Top 5, top 10, top 10. So other than Wyndham Clark, every one of these champions of the U.S. Open top 10'd that year's PGA Championship. So right off the bat, we're coming over to, I know the vision's slightly skewed. Oh no, I fixed that for you. PGA 2025. We're looking at these top 10, maybe top 15 guys. Scotty, Bryson, Davis Riley, English, Pendrith, Vegas, D. McCarthy, Rahm, Ben Griffin, who's been very hot, Keegan, Neiman, Siwoo. All of these players, all of these former champions, top 10 that year's PGA. Why so much of an emphasis on irons? Take a look at this. Some of these are proprietary, like the Masters. Makes sense why recent form is important, since you have to be so accurate. Yeah, that's part of it. But let's take a look at these irons. Gained two and a half or so the PGA, and then wins the U.S. Open. Even Wyndham Clark was in fuego with his irons leading up to his win at LACC. I mean, absolutely in fuego with the irons. Matt Fitzpatrick, even if he missed the cut at a couple of these tournaments, still hot with the irons. Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm is the only player in the sample size that had a tournament where he lost with irons. Literally every other one of these is positive. I'm assuming positive. We don't have the stats from the Masters, but I'm assuming positive. If you're top 10ing, top 15, top 5, I'm assuming it's at least average. But Rahm is the only one that had a tournament that was negative in irons. So we're looking for extremely hot, extremely in-form irons on these guys. Interestingly enough, even though I've talked about all of the precision and the accuracy and stuff tonight with the off the tee, take a look at the driving distance. Every single one of these players was hitting it far. So that's why I'm still leaving myself some wiggle room, 5% for driving distance, because it's hard to ignore this fact that every single tournament lead up to the U.S. Open for these champions, they were positive by a pretty big margin. These aren't, 2s and 3s and 4s. Bryson, 32 and a 19. Wyndham Clark, 21, 17 and a half, 16. These are big numbers in terms of distance. So distance can absolutely help. Something else. Let's take a look at some recent major performance for these players, for these U.S. Open champions. Bryson came in on a runner-up from the PGA, won the U.S. Open. He had also top 10 the Masters, top 20 the previous U.S. Open, or previous year's U.S. Open. Another top 5 at the PGA. Wyndham Clark, again, kind of an outlier. Didn't play the Masters, missed the cut at the PGA. Made the cut horrendously at the Open Championship, missed at the U.S. Open. But Fitzpatrick had at least a modicum of success the past couple of years in majors. Jon Rahm. This is blank because this is 2020. And I don't want to include 2020. So he had been solid in previous year's majors. Gary Woodland even solid. This is an 8th at the PGA that year. This is a 6th at the prior year's PGA. There's a lot of correlation between U.S. Open and PGA in terms of top finishes. So be mindful of that. So if you want to see, the full detail, or at least, I shouldn't say full detail. If you want a more concise description of the research that I had found. I put it on social media over on X earlier today, and there were six players that fit all of the criteria that I had found. I am going to put a slight asterisk on that. There are a couple of live players in there, and they only had the PGA Championship to go on as far as stats. So take that for what you will. But there were 6 players that fit the criteria that I had found, and then there were 3 that came very, very close. So I put that over on social media. I'll let you browse that. But that is going to be it for the show this evening. I'll bring us to the U.S. Open prior performance at these various tournaments, at various or past U.S. Opens, and you can see how well they've done in terms of strokes gained and average finish and whatnot. That's going to be it for the show. I want to thank Joey and Derek, Anthony, and Phil for jumping into chat. Very, very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Some weeks better than others. It's a major week. We're going to try to put our best foot forward and set us up for the final quarter or so of the PGA Tour season. So thanks again for all the support, for all of the wagers you've made so far this week for the U.S. Open, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the U.S. Open, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.